Sounds
Welcome back.
good.
Welcome back, everyone, to another very special episode of Life Coach Live. Today, I have a very exciting opportunity where I'm going to be the interviewer in this case, and our very special guest today is none other than our normal co-host, Tyler Nouwens. So, first off, I just want to say welcome, Tyler. How are you? How are you feeling
Thanks.
today?
Yeah, good. Great to be here. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
Absolutely. So it's something a little bit different. We have tried a couple of Tyler, yourself, you've done a couple of interviews just before Christmas, which have been fantastic to see. I did think that, getting a little bit more about your story would be a fantastic way to help the people out there listening understand a little bit more about yourself and who you are, but also from very much a personal point of view. We've got to know each other quite well over the last 18 months or so, 2 years. And, I'm excited to be able to have this opportunity live on the air to find out a little bit more. We've spoken in detail about some of the successes that you've had. You've been able to remain self-employed for such a long time. Coaching has been a huge part of your journey today. And I guess that's the perfect place to start. Coaching, I think even in the call we had, or the chat that we had earlier this week, you mentioned that even before actively working as a coach, you had that calling to be a coach. It was almost, I got the feeling it was almost in your blood for such a long time beforehand. So I'm curious to ask what coaching means to you.
Oh gosh, well that's changed because it's been 30 years since the first inspiration to basically share whatever knowledge and support and wisdom and guidance that I had received at that point in my life. I was just so inspired by all that I had received that it was just a kind of a natural thing to want to give back and to share what I had received with others. And so, and for me to really communicate what it was that I received is, for me, it's really difficult to answer within a couple minute time frame. But I mean, basically, if I was to use a before and after, so I guess before I was searching for happiness and fulfillment in my life, and it was something that was beyond my career. I had already found my career. I was already in business, established in a business. I had just recently made a bunch of money, and it was something like, basically I had gone from, I think one of my previous jobs, this is back in the early 1990s, I think the minimum wage was like $7 an hour. So I had been working at a building supply company for $7 an hour, and then about within a year later, I was billing out my time for $75 an hour. So, for me as a guy in my early 20s, that was just that alone it took me time to process that I was worthy of billing my time out at $75 an hour, because my previous experience prior to that in a bunch of different jobs was, 7 or 8, or, sometimes I think I had some commission jobs as well. So I'd make a base salary plus commission, but it would be very small compared to billing out at $75 an hour. And I was doing very prestigious work for large clients early on. And, so I was excited, I was enthused, I was learning, I was growing, but that was kind of more of an external thing. And what was really going on with me internally was I was searching for something deeper and more profound and fulfilling. And to the point where, I felt like there was something wrong with me. And I don't know if I've shared this story with you before, but it was on New Year's Eve. And it was, I think, 1994. So it was going to be 1995. And I couldn't, there wasn't a lot going on in terms of partying with my friends, which I was accustomed to, and getting drunk or stoned or whatever, and just, partying it up. But I think I had done that for so many years, and I was at the point where the previous year, I remember being with all these people that I had grown up with, and midnight had struck, and everybody's celebrating and hugging and, that whole thing. And my experience was I never felt more alone in my life. And so the next New Year's Eve, I just couldn't bring myself to try to pursue connection and fulfillment through the same means, because I had been pursuing that means for many years throughout my teenage years and so forth. So what I ended up doing was going to actually a meditation program, like a yoga New Year's Eve celebration. And I just remember the moment I sat down, it was such a relief for me, because it was like the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. And I remember the first thought I sat down, I can finally be myself.
Yes.
I didn't have to pretend to be cool, or I didn't have to pretend to be successful, or, that whole kind of game that I had been kind of conditioned into through high school, being popular and all of that kind of stuff. So that was really the beginning of my kind of my journey. And what I have found through that quest that began at it's kind of a yoga meditation group. What I received through going that path, and it didn't take long. It was only actually a few months where I felt like my life had completely turned around. And that first moment of me wanting to share with others and be a life coach, me wanting to share with others what I had received, that was around the time of my 23rd birthday, which was only 8 months later after the New Year's. Yeah. So I jumped deep into meditation and spiritual practices and reading. I did a lot of reading, and all of the stuff that I read was about how to find true happiness. And the bottom line is, Paul, is that the happiness that I was seeking, I was conditioned to look for it externally in material things, or in relationships, or in money, or in jobs, or prestige, or, like I had been an actor and I had an agent, and in my teenage years, and I'd been on TV, and I met Johnny Depp on set, and like all of that stuff. Like I really pursued success and all of that stuff early on in my youth, and so basically, just to finish off my thought, what I had learned in in reading, books on yoga and that type of thing was basically that the only happiness that would actually truly fulfill, satisfy my soul was actually to be found within myself, independent from any external things. And it's not to say that, of course, when we have worldly accomplishments or successes, it brings us some fulfillment and happiness and so forth. But what I've observed is that all of that type of thing is very short-lived. And then we're kind of back to what's the next thing? It doesn't sustain itself. And so basically the teachings, the understanding is that the source of happiness that is sustainable and constant within oneself, you already are in possession of. You're just ignorant of it. You just don't realize what it is, what the true source of happiness is. And that also ties in with who you really are. Who you really are is happiness, is the source of happiness that you seek. So that's just kind of a summary of the basic philosophy and teachings I've basically been studying and practicing this stuff for 30 years. So
yeah, fascinating. There's so much there that we could dive into and pull apart, but was always happening at the same time. So you went through a couple of different jobs you spoke about. Then sort of started your journey towards being self-employed around that same time. Were those two stories about the career and what happened with you going to that meditation center, were they roughly about the same time, or?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the career came and then very shortly after the searching for spirituality, the spiritual search really began. And really, when I say it began, it had already begun. I just wasn't aware of it. So when I say that the spiritual search begun, it begun consciously. I was consciously aware of what it was that I was seeking. And prior to that, I was seeking the happiness, the success, the fulfillment, but I didn't realize that I was doing it. I wasn't really conscious of that fact. And all of my means and methods kind of up until that point brought me to a dead end, where instead of the fulfillment and the happiness and it was and it got to the point where it was like the exact opposite. It was like, oh no, not disappointment again. Like, when am I gonna find that thing that my heart longs for, So.
And it's a little bit different to my journey as such. My journey of understanding myself and becoming self-employed maybe happened at a similar time as well, but it was much more recent. It was only 5-6 years ago. I'm curious. This is, we've spoken about these interviews that we potentially want to do many more of as a way to highlight the successes that people have been able to achieve. And I just look at this, being self-employed, being on this journey for the last 30 years as such a wonderful measure of success in itself. How is your reflection when you look back at what you've been able to achieve over that period of time? What comes to mind when you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's funny because, again, our normal understanding of success, usually, I'm saying it's pretty standard across the board from a cultural standpoint, that standards of success are more things that can be observed externally, and we'll just jump to the present day where you see that being expressed on social media. All of these people are taking pictures of themselves getting on a plane, a private jet, or driving a super expensive car with, if you're a guy, then the idea is you've got a big yacht and all these hot chicks in bikinis going with you, and you've got all this money floating around, and so and what I'm saying is that's just a really extreme example of what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is actually much more subtle than that. It can happen at a very subtle level. And, if things don't quite go, if my expectations aren't met in a relationship, then I'm down, I'm disappointed. If, if I'm counting on something to happen and then it doesn't happen, then I'm, it takes me some time to recover, and or now I have to process whatever anger and resentment I have towards that person for screwing me, or backstabbing me, or letting me down, or and then I get into my woe is me, this always happens to me, and how come I can't, like there's that whole story. And so basically, for me, that is really one of the underlying marks of success, is what's actually going on internally within you on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis. What kind of thoughts are you having? What kind of emotions are you having? What's your understanding? Are you taking responsibility for your life, or are you, in a victim mentality, or always looking to make other people wrong in order to make myself feel better? Like putting, and we do it subtly. Like we're not really conscious of our behavior. And I think that was kind of the first real benefit. Like when I started meditating, was basically because I was quite young when I did it. So, and I took to the practice very regularly. And one of the things that happened was I literally observed my whole life from my earliest memories up until the present. And I rewatched it. It was almost like I was watching a movie, and I was going, and I saw myself, and I'm like, oh my God. And I saw all of the ignorance, all of the things that I had done, that when I'm watching it, I was like, oh, I'd get in touch with shame, or I'd feel guilty, or I'd feel remorseful, or I'd feel, oh, I'm so sorry, like to this person. I didn't realize that, but I could see it all, I could see myself. And so, a lot of people resist doing introspective work because they're a bit concerned of what it is that they're going to have to see, and so one of our coping mechanisms is, it's to ignore it. We don't want to face the truth. We don't, and there's that saying, the truth will set you free. It's just being honest with yourself. That's how I kind of understand that statement. And the truth is not something that, it's not like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and, I'm on a quest, and once I find that ark, then all the secrets of the world will be revealed to me, and then I'll finally know the truth. No, the truth, actually, the lost ark, you are the lost ark. You discover the truth within yourself. And there's this deep part within each of us that recognizes the truth. You could call it your conscience. But the truth of the matter is, your conscience, it's like part of our biology, if you will. It's part of our being. We have a mind, we have feelings, we have a body. Well, we also have a conscience, and I find that that primarily the world, particularly like a lot of stuff in politics and corporate and greed and, all of that stuff, basically, from a worldly standpoint, in order to be successful, from a worldly standpoint, what we kind of consider, I would say the vast majority, people would have to ignore their conscience and do things that they know they shouldn't really be doing, but they're so committed to having that success that in order for them to get there, then they have to ignore their conscience, right? And they have to do things like, war. Like, I mean, it goes, like what I'm actually talking about, Paul, is so prevalent and rampant in our history. It's not even funny. It's so, it's been such a part of our, our who we are as humanity. And I just feel like if we were really all honest with ourselves, and we were true to ourselves, that we would have a lot more love and compassion and kindness. And instead of each of us pursuing our own individual success and glory and power and money and fame, it would be more of a shared thing, and we'd be more supporting each other so that we can all be the best that we can be, so that we can all experience abundance and joy and fulfillment. And, and there's no reason why the world can't be that way, except that we want to ignore, so.
That's fascinating, Tyler. And I love hearing you talk about this. It's clearly something that forms a huge part of who you are. And, from what I can see, this is a practice that forms part. It has become part of you and who you are. And I love that definition of success. Because I was asking about external success, and you brought it all the way back to what's most important is the internal measure of success, and making sure that you're doing things that are aligned with you and your values. And clearly the external successes have followed, which is fascinating. And and I also love this desire and need to want to give back from that place of genuineness.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious to ask, what are those key core lessons that you think other up and coming coaches potentially can benefit most from?
Oh gosh. I think one of the big things is self-awareness, and to really understand why you do the things you do and why you want the things you want. And one of the things that I became aware of early on was a lot of the things that I wanted wasn't purely because I wanted it. It was more because I was afraid of the alternative. So the real issue that I wasn't necessarily conscious or aware of only until I started doing self-awareness and self-reflection and contemplation on actually seeing myself and what was all that about, and examining things. It's almost like, you're a scientist and you're doing a bit of a self experiment. And so you're seeing, and you're just looking at the facts. You're not fabricating some results, But what I realized was that a lot of the decision making in my life was because I was afraid. And so to counteract that fear, to kind of prevent the thing I was afraid of from happening, I need to do this, right? So, and whatever this thing was, it wasn't for the right reason. Like, of course, there's things to be afraid of, and there's great logic, right? In what do you call it? Ensuring that things don't go off tilt, right? Like, you want to preserve, you want to be smart, and all of that kind of thing. Of course, but when we are living, when we are trying to put our best foot forward, it really should come up from a place of genuine, like an authenticity. And that's a big word you and I use. It should be because this is true to me. this is what I want, as opposed to, well, I don't want this. So I better do this. If I don't want that, then I better do that. And there's a great difference. And what I noticed is that when I did, well, I better do that, it always had a dead end. It doesn't lead you anywhere because you're not doing it for the right reason. Whereas if you find out what it is that you really want, or what your true vision is for your life, or your true purpose, and you are patient with that. Okay, I want it today. Next year, do I still want it? Yeah, I still want it. Okay. So if over time that doesn't change, and you become more confident and certain that this is who I am and this is genuine to me, and I understand myself and I understand the why, like I'm sincere about this. It's not because I'm trying to, I've got secret plans to try to control the world and to possess all these things and all of that thing. But if it's something that is authentic and true to you consistently over a long period of time, then when you pursue that thing, it's going to lead somewhere, because you're going to keep going after it, right? As opposed to, well, I thought I wanted that, but I don't want that anymore, so I'm going to go try this other thing, right? So it's like becoming a master at something. These master craftsmen, for example, they spend, I forgot what they say, 10,000 hours or something like that, which is, there's people that have spent 100,000 hours doing stuff. There's people that have lost themselves in the art of whatever they're creating, whatever their craft is, and these are the ones that become greats. They're not doing it because they're trying to achieve the worldly acknowledgement and greatness. Some do, but I'm talking about the pure motive, right? They're doing it because it's what they're called to do, and what they're inspired to do, and what they have to do. They can't not do it, right? So I think there's a lot of power in that. And, just from a practical standpoint, like, you hear a lot of people on, that we consider leaders, thought leaders or whatever, and they say, well, find something that you love doing, and then when you do it, it won't feel like you're working, because you love it. So it's kind of like, well, you'd be doing it anyways, even if you weren't getting paid, because you love it. Like that's the reward. The reward is the fulfillment and the joy and the love that you experience while you're doing it. And when you do things with that kind of energy, with passion and love and devotion and commitment and authenticity and sincerity, how can the final product not be great? How can it not be the best that it could possibly be? So these are the kind of principles that I'm interested in, that I study, that I practice, that I work with, and it's taken me a long time. Like I'm just really starting this coaching journey in terms of an outward expression. It's something that it's been with me for decades, So, I'm 52, and why not do this for the next 20 or 30 years?
Yeah, I love it. I love, what I'm hearing come through there is this has been a journey that's been going 30 years, I think you said.
Yep.
I get the feeling you're still learning every single day. You're putting your dedication and practice into becoming that master that you spoke about. And there's still lessons coming up every day, which I think is wonderful.
Absolutely. You nailed that one. Yeah. It's, and I think it's important to maintain that approach of I'm learning as I go, because the moment you think you're beyond making mistakes or beyond learning, that's the moment when you stop growing, that you stop evolving, that you stop expanding and becoming greater. And when I say greater, there's a humility to it. It's not an ego greatness. Oh, look at me. Look how great I am. It's not like that. It's the greatness is in you being you, despite what anyone else thinks you should be or what the world tells you should be. It's you being you. That to me, and we've spoken about this in the past.
So many times we've spoken about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that's where we're aligned.
Yeah.
I'm curious to ask, is there a story or an experience you can share about how you've been able to make a difference in someone else's life with this philosophy?
It's funny you say that, Paul, because there's from a philosophical, from a scientific, I won't even say philosophical standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, what I have observed, the reality of the world is that there's positive and negative effects. Okay. And, I can just as easily tell you all the negative effects that I've had on people as I can of the positive effects on people, and I try not to get too high or low on either side. I try to remain equal. I try to learn from both. When I've had a negative effect on someone, I really, really try to take responsibility for it rather than, well, so-and-so deserved it. Did you see what they were doing to me? I'm entitled to be an asshole because they started it, and so I really take responsibility and I examine what had happened. What was my responsibility in that? And why? What was going on with me? So that I have a better understanding, so that I can learn, so that I don't keep repeating that again. The last thing I want to do is have a negative effect on people or to cause pain or suffering on people. And often you heard the expression, we hurt the ones we love the most, the ones that are closest to us. And so you really have to start with yourself, because we think and talk, we have self-talk that is actually hurts. We actually hurt ourselves through our own self-talk. Then we also have these close relationships where we hurt each other. I'm not saying it's intentional. I'm not saying it's on purpose, but we need to be mindful of the effect that we have on people. So, certainly there are positive effects that I've had on people. And, there's things that I could say, but I really feel like it's a little bit boastful, and I'm not entirely comfortable saying it. My goal is to be an example, to be a light for people that are going through darkness, and to be a support, and to be honest, to be real. And really what I want to do is I want to shine a light on people's innate greatness, inherent goodness, inherent, there's so much within each of us that is great and good. And I want whatever's stopping that, whatever's in the way of you consciously seeing that for yourself and embracing it and aligning with it and living your life, allowing that light and that goodness to be the cause for everything you feel, think, and do. That's really why I'm pursuing, we call it life coaching, but that's just kind of the name of the day. 20 years ago, there wasn't many life coaches. I don't think even Tony Robbins was predominant back there, but I don't even think he called himself a life coach back then. So more of anyways.
Now there's some real power in being able to live it yourself and have developed these skills that you've honed for the last 30 years or so, and to be that example. And I know you don't potentially want to be boastful, but even for myself, just being able to see that different perspective that you bring from the experience that you've been able to gain over the last 30 years has been tremendous for me to be able to see things from a different perspective, and no doubt there is tremendous value that can be found out there as well. So
thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to ask. We've spoken about your philosophy. We've also had quite a few conversations about the coaching path that we've put together. Really understanding who we are. That understanding of what is most important to us, how we're going to show up, and what we're going to do. And I love the idea behind the philosophy. Is that where is it this work that you've been putting in developing over the last 30 years? Is that the output, I guess you could say, of that work?
Yeah, I think for me, there's been a process of maturation and being able to embody or imbibe what it is that I've been learning and practicing. And I feel like, I feel that it's okay that I'm wanting to do what I'm wanting to do now, because I think I wasn't ready. Even though I wanted to do it 5 years ago, I just wasn't ready. Wasn't my time. And yeah, so I can't quite remember the question.
We've obviously spoken a lot about the coaching path and the passion that you have brought to us developing that. I was just asking, is that a summary, I guess, of the philosophy that you're talking about, or being able to
okay.
yourself?
Okay, so when you study something for a long time and you practice and you implement it and you test drive it, if you will, and you can see how it works and you can learn from it, and you also, I've developed relationships with other people that are kind of practicing and implementing the same types of principles in their life. So basically what I've tried to do is take something that, because when I was first exposed to it, very vast, very abstract, and through the process, I feel like it's kind of been refined. Like I've processed all of it. Like I've taken all of the information and I've kind of refined it. And so what I'm trying to do, I think, is I wasn't even aware of it necessarily until you asked me the question, is I'm trying to make it simple for people and something that they can actually, that's practical and then they can actually see for themselves. And it's not something, so philosophy is not religion, even though a lot of what I have studied and processed has fallen under the religious umbrella or spiritual umbrella. And I love the word philosophy. So I like using that umbrella for it, because philosophy applies to life and living. We all have whether we're aware of it or not, we all have our own philosophy in life, and that's what we adhere to. But the word philosophy in and of itself means, I think, Philo and Sophia, so Sophia is the goddess of love, the Greek goddess of love, and Philo means wisdom. So the word philosophy actually, when I looked it up in Wikipedia, it actually was, the simple definition was love of wisdom. And I thought, yes, that's what it is for me. That's what I love, because when there's wisdom, then everybody benefits, and it's different. Wisdom is not the same as knowledge, because knowledge is, there's so much information. So I would put the knowledge under information, and wisdom is lived. Wisdom is lived experience. That's the only way that you can get. And I remember actually being in my 20s and wanting to, you know, be great, you know, do greater things and help people. And I remember realizing and knowing that I didn't have enough experience. I didn't. And I knew I had to surrender to that fact and accept that fact. And I knew that I had a lot of lessons that I needed to go through and learn in order to gain that experience, that life experience and that wisdom. And, you know, so, and there's harm, I'll tell you, without going through that process, and you want to set yourself up as a leader, or you want to set yourself up as a, you know, some sort of coach or whatever you want to call it. If you haven't gone through you're just repeating secondhand knowledge. You're just repeating information that you collected somewhere, and you're just repeating it and packaging it, making it sound good and look good, so you can make a buck, or so you can position yourself and think of yourself as being successful or this or that. So, yeah, that's kind of a good question.
I love that definition of, or the distinction between information or knowledge and wisdom. I couldn't agree more. It's it's embodied wisdom in some way, embodied knowledge, isn't it? Like, we can't teach ourselves anything just by reading up on it. We have to actually get out there and experience and do the things. So, yeah, appreciate that. I think that's fantastic. We're probably running a little bit short of time. I think I could talk on this. I'll talk to you about everything we've spoken about today for much, much longer, but I might try and limit it to another couple of questions.
Yeah.
If there's anything that you keep coming back to yourself, like a reminder, or something that you feel is important to you to just keep coming back to you, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I think that we're all seeking, we're all searching, every human being. I think we're all, when we come to this planet, when we, you know, are born on Earth, I think inherent within us, we have desires, we have aspirations. And I think that we have been conditioned to think that in order for those deep desires and aspirations to be fulfilled, that we have to somehow find the objects of our desires and fulfillment outside of ourselves. And the thing that I keep coming back to is that all of those things are an effect.
Yeah.
And that the cause, that we're actually seeking the cause. The effect is inherent in the cause. The effect is going to happen, right? It's simple law. It's a science, cause and effect. So my thing that I've really continued to practice and focus on is focus on the cause.
Yeah.
Be the cause. Okay. Don't chase after something abstract down the road that may or may not happen how you want it. Don't get attached. And I'll tell you a real positive or a real practical reason for not doing that is because, you know, most of the time things never pan out how we plan anyways. So if you've got your heart set on a certain thing happening and then it doesn't happen, people can go into major depression. You know, they might lose a few years. Might take them a few years to kind of recover and pick themselves back up because they're so devastated by their dreams and aspirations being, you know, squashed. And I'm speaking from experience. I've been through that, you know, and that's part of the wisdom is when you said, yeah, you got to go through it. Yeah, you have to go through. There's heartache and disappointment that we have to go through, and we have to learn about it, really understand it, and again, that's how we that's how we learn and grow, and we become wise not to repeat the same thing. So, yeah, that's my best shot at keeping the answer short there.
Great answer, Tyler. Lastly, I'd just like to, we've got a couple of questions I could ask, but
okay.
I would like to ask, where to next? Where do you see yourself? I know that whole vision piece is something that many of us have challenges with, and I think that came through in the answer that you just described there. What is next for you? Where do you see yourself sort of growing into in the next couple of years?
For me, it's there's a consistency that's required in order for the vision to be fulfilled. Whatever your vision is, whatever your goal is, it requires consistency. And, that is easier said than done. Oftentimes we get on a roll and things are going well, and it's easy to take consistent action. But it's when you run up across these obstacles and these barriers, or things go a little sideways and you're dealing with adversity and turmoil, and then that consistency, that's a lot more difficult. And so again, it's a practice, and so you don't want to get too high, you don't want to get too low, and you want to keep your eye on the vision. And whatever's happening along the way as a result, you reflect on, you learn from, you embody it, it becomes wisdom, and you keep going. And that's what I want for myself. And I believe at an essential level, we're all the same. I feel that we all want essentially the same thing. It's just that we have different ideas about what it is, but the actual fulfillment, the way that we actually all derive true fulfillment and satisfaction, I think it can really only happen at a deeper level.
I love it, Tyler, and it's it sounds like it's just continuing to put that practice in and coming back to the basics of understanding. I think it's a wonderful philosophy to hold. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this today, Tyler. Before we go, is there anything else that you would like to add or contribute to this conversation?
Just my gratitude and thanks to you, Paul, for showing up and for your commitment and your vision to be authentic and to face whatever the obstacles are, and to commit to just taking everything in stride and continuing to move closer towards the fulfillment of your vision. So I appreciate that. And thanks for taking your time today to have this great conversation.
Absolutely not a problem at all. It's been an absolute pleasure. If anyone's listening to this conversation and they do want to find out more about your philosophies and what you're up to, how's the best way for people to reach out to you?
They can email me at tyler@nouwens as in Sam.ca. So tyler@nouwens.ca. And I'd probably just send the ebook that we developed, the Live Coaching Path, and it kind of puts things in simple terms. But again, that's when you read it, that's just book knowledge. It needs to be applied and practiced in order for that knowledge and information to transform itself into embodied wisdom, which I think is the real key to being happy and to be successful.
Fantastic. All right, Tyler. as I said, that's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be back again next week in our regular time slot next Tuesday, I believe. So looking forward to catching up with you again then. Guys, bye for now. If anyone does have any comments, feedback, questions, please reach out, and we will be back very soon.
Thanks, Paul.